Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gascles Davis from GearWorks.com and the E2KG Network podcasting channel here on YouTube. Welcome back for another episode of It's Another Thing Movies. This is episode number 3, and tonight we are revisiting what we may determine is one of the classics. Maybe it's not. I guess that's partially what we're here to talk about. If you don't know our shtick, we get together twice a month, spool some movies that are dropping mostly on Netflix. We may be doing some other things in here, but or basically, it's almost kind of like a movie of the month kind of club, almost sort of kind of, but it's hyper focused on movies that are about to drop on Netflix because those are in many cases movies that have just released to digital. And the I don't know, presiding co-host or whatever throws those movies out. The other co-host makes the pick. We go off, we watch that movie, and then we come back and discuss it in what is sort of a review show, and then we do it all over again, and we do it live so that you guys can hear what the pick is going to be, so that if you want to follow along, you can also go watch the movie and then reconvene with us for the second podcast of the month. Here with me, as always, I have my stalwart companion, Mr. Peter Morrow. Peter, how you doing?
I am sore and hungry, but
All
ready to
right.
go.
So tonight we are going to be revisiting Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves from 1999, I think it is. So very quickly, let's run
91.
down 91.
Yeah,
Really?
it's an older
Yes,
one.
correct. Summer movie,
Yeah.
1991. So let's go ahead and run down the tail of the tape very quickly. I don't want to date myself too much. Let's just say it was a time in my life where I was kind of sort of off for the summer, not quite off for the summer. I had some things to do over the summer, but it was not my normal routine. So this movie dropped. I went to see it with a bunch of my buddies that I was with for the summer time. Movie budget at the time was $48 million. It wound up grossing $165.5 million domestic, another $225 million foreign or international, for a take of just under 400 million. Am I reading that right? Yeah, just under 400 million. Uh, so it definitely made its money back, unquestionably, almost tenfold from what its original budget was. It was one of the larger movies of the summer. It was nominated for 1 Oscar. And we're a little behind and flabbergasted tonight, so we're reading a lot of this in real time. So um, I can't see. I'm not sure what the Oscar was, but it was a number 2 movie that opened that year, the second largest opening weekend for the year. The number 1 PG-13 rated movie for 1991, and the number 2 movie worldwide. So this was kind of a big deal in 1991. Kevin Costner was kind of at the height of his popularity. You threw in Morgan Freeman as well. Um, you had Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, who at the time, I guess I thought, wow, I expect her to see her in a lot more things. And of course, I don't really think that she went on to do much of anything else other than like The Abyss, I think was her big thing. And that may have actually been before this. Yeah, The Abyss was actually
Yeah.
2 years before this. And it's probably why she got this job. And then I don't know that I've seen that much of her since then.
And then Alan Rickman, of course.
Yes, yes, we're definitely going to talk Alan Rickman during this this podcast. Christian Slater, I almost forgot about him. Um,
Kind of a minor role.
yes, Michael Wincott. Do we know if was the Crow after this? Crow was 1994, so yes, so Michael
Yeah.
Wincott went on from this 3 years later to star in the Crow. And I think that's about it that I can think of that was like really a big name.
Yeah.
Uh, so that kind of takes care of that. Let's start talking through our normal regime. So I guess there's not a lot of point in asking how do you come to know the tale of Robin of the Hood. Before this, we've all been exposed to it in some
Disney.
way. Yeah, right. We ran through the finances. Sorry, we're a little rusty tonight. We've been on quite a hiatus. We went through the cast special notes, really. So I'll just go straight to actor chemistry. Now, in the intro, actually, for the podcast, I referred to this as the Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman buddy cop movie, kind of. And obviously, I particularly like their chemistry in this podcast, in this movie. Any other standout chemistry between actors, actresses that you noticed during this movie, Peter?
Little John and Fanny.
Yeah, there were what
It was believable.
yeah, there was,
Yeah.
there was one scene, maybe a couple scenes.
Yeah. I mean, everyone else's performances just kind of felt a little forced to me, you know?
Yeah, and we could talk a little bit about Costner himself, right? Because obviously, uh, in the opening scenes of the movie, it sounds like he is very forcibly trying to create a British accent for himself, and I guess the relief in the movie is about midway through the movie, kind of really when it really kicks into high gear with the Robin Hood-esque action. He slowly lets that just fade away.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. It was better when he let it go.
Right, and kudos to him. And I don't know what order this movie was filmed in. Obviously, movies are not necessarily filmed in scene to scene order. But it almost felt like he gradually let it slide away so it wouldn't be so jarring. I want to say I think when I saw the movie as a much younger man, that I didn't even realize it. Like we got to the end of the movie and I was like, oh yeah, like somewhere in the movie he like stopped using the British accent and I didn't even notice it.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Costner did a great job playing Kevin Costner.
Yeah, yeah, which is kind of always his thing, right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it is a bad thing.
right, right. Yeah, it's kind of I'm trying to think of what other actors could you say that about. I think they're good actors, um, because Johnny Depp does that, and that's obviously not good. Hence
Mhm.
Disney's recent decision. But like Denzel is kind of always Denzel in every
Yeah.
movie. Um,
I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a version of himself in a lot of his movies.
yeah, yeah.
The
Ryan,
Rock used to play a version of The Rock.
right, right, right. Ryan Reynolds. I think Ryan
Yeah.
Reynolds a lot is
Yeah.
himself.
I mean, again, it's not a knock on their abilities. It's
Right.
just they seem to have a type.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Breakout performances in the movie. Anyone really strike out at you as being particularly noteworthy?
You know, I laughed a lot at Michael McShane's Friar Tuck.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
you know, it was over the top. But there was some character development. There's some character progression along the way, and I enjoyed that. I liked Will Scarlet, Christian Slater,
Yeah.
um, Morgan Freeman. Was definitely a shining point for me. Definitely, he did a good job. You know, I'm not. Uh, he was definitely the fish out of water. I
Yeah.
think he was able to play that well and still be true to the character's background.
Yeah, and deliberately so, I think. And did that not feel like historically appropriate?
Uh, I'm not actually sure if it's
I mean,
100% historically appropriate,
well,
but
I should say, but I mean, like it definitely felt like he was a fish out of water, but it felt like he should have been a fish out of water.
yeah, no, it fit. The
Okay,
fish out of water fit,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah, and it's again one of the great charms to me of that movie is that relationship between Morgan Freeman and Kevin Costner, and I don't know, do we know, did they ever work together again on anything significant?
I don't know. Um, Now I'm doing the scrolling and the reading. I want to say no.
Yeah, I
All
can't.
it's coming up is Prince of Thieves.
Right. Yeah, I can't think of anything significant that
Um,
they.
this was kind of the turning point in Morgan Freeman's career, right? I mean, he
Uh
just. I remember him getting a lot more roles after this movie.
so I mean the I guess the big question then would have been when was Lean on Me, because I felt like that was his big turning point.
Not the song, the movie. Oh, that was 89. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then Shawshank was when? Shawshank was 94.
And that was
Yeah,
definitely the. Well, really, I mean, Driving Miss Daisy, too, was a big one.
yeah. I guess I don't think of this as his
I guess what I mean is he was on his way up.
yeah. I feel like this was his well, but again, he never did anything like this again, right? This was a cross genre step for him,
Yeah,
um, because I mean he's always done the dramatic stuff, but he has never done like an action oriented thing. Not that I know of. Maybe he had in his younger career. Um, but yeah, and this to me was maybe a bit of a crossover hit in terms of demographically getting in front of maybe Caucasian audiences and maybe younger audiences. Um, Instead of in these like minority dramatic roles.
right.
But yeah, I really enjoyed him. Alan Rickman to me was the breakout performance of this movie.
Oh, yeah?
Um, just kind of, I mean, and he would go on to do better things, but
Yeah. Didn't it almost seem to you that they kind of made him an over the top cartoonish supervillain?
yes, but I felt like that was kind of deliberate.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and I also feel like, I mean, I don't, I mean, so we saw him. I mean, we saw him in Die Hard. We saw him go on to be Snape. I want to say, like, I just don't. There's a certain like flavor that he adds to those roles when he does them that I feel like is uniquely his own, and I just don't know that. So I feel like some of that was him.
Yeah. I,
Uh,
I just felt like they underdeveloped him.
he was definitely kind of one dimensional
Yeah.
and one tone.
That's
Yeah,
maybe what I was annoyed with when I watched it is because of a personal bias that I've seen so much of his other work.
right,
In
right,
Galaxy Quest, he was fantastic.
yeah,
He's one of my favorite villains
right,
from Die Hard,
right.
and and to see him play such a one-dimensional character.
Yeah. Uh and and to be honest, like I mean this is a Disney movie kind of, and despite d- d- despite my normal thing, which is I say that nothing makes me angrier than a um movie where the characters are one dimensional and nobody moves forward. Maybe it's just because I was younger when I saw this, but it is it's a very one-dimensional movie. Like
Yeah.
everybody kind of remains the same. But I kind of feel like as a Disney live action movie, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a Disney?
I thought it was Disney. Although when I saw when I was reminded of the brief nudity scene of Kevin Costner's buttocks in the movie, I was like, was this Disney?
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
that
Well,
makes sense.
I stand corrected. Yeah, um,
It felt like a Disney.
it did, and I thought it was. While we're talking about breakout roles and we're talking about who made the movie, one of the breakout roles to me is the soundtrack. Um, if nothing for the fact that, and I'm going to Google this really quick again.
Yeah, everyone loves Bryan Adams.
Oh no, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say, and actually,
no.
I mean the big song from this was the I don't not duet but triplet between was it Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sorry, no, I'm thinking of Three Musketeers.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sorry.
I did that too. It's fine.
Yeah.
This was Everything I Do for You,
Yes.
Bryan Adams.
Yes, which still gets covered to this day. No,
Oh, yeah.
what I was going to say is the introductory theme, the opening theme for the song, is one that is used over and over and over again, and is licensed in like it seems like any action movie trailer that comes out where its soundtrack isn't done yet uses that introductory song. So it frequently gets used, and it used to confuse me, like the first 5 or 10 years after this movie came out, because I would hear that introductory song and I'd be like, is this a sequel to Robin Hood? And I'm like, it's not even like in the genre, and I didn't understand how like music worked back then as far as licensing and everything goes. But Michael Kamen did the soundtrack to this, who has done a lot of movie soundtracks. So
no, I enjoyed the soundtrack, and I like Bryan Adams.
So yeah, so I mean, just whether they were breakout performances or not, I feel like just in terms of who I felt was like fun to watch. Like I said, was Alan Rickman, Morgan Freeman, and then a lot of the supporting cast, like Little John, Friar Tuck was hilarious.
Did Little John, the depiction of Little John, did it kind of remind you of like Grizzly Adams, or a movie, just a movie about an old prospector lost in the woods?
I mean, he definitely kind of evoked that just with the way they did his makeup and dressing and stuff.
Yeah.
So now I'm like got a super trivia thing on about Michael Kamen. So I'm trying to see. So he did The Highlander, Lethal Weapon, Adventures in Babysitting. Did the soundtrack to Die Hard. License to Kill, one of my favorite Bond films. Roadhouse, Lethal Weapon 2, Die Hard
Roadhouse.
2. Yeah. Hudson Hawk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The Last Boy Scout. So somebody...
Wasn't that another Kevin Costner film?
Last Boy Scout was Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. So, but somewhere in here, there's a recurring set of DNA threaded somewhere through here in terms of Die Hard 2, Hudson Hawk, and The Last Boy Scout. Tales from the Crypt, that one was interesting. Lethal Weapon 3, Blue Ice. Last Action Hero, you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger before. Three Musketeers. Apparently enjoys
that makes sense.
Apparently enjoys working with Bryan Adams as well.
Yeah, well.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, so he did the soundtrack to all the Die Hard movies.
All the good ones.
Yeah. So lots of stuff. Actually, the first X-Men movie.
Oh.
Yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. So pacing and length. This is a nearly 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah.
In the early 1990.
In a time where movies were barely 90.
Right. Yeah, except for like maybe like what Star Wars movies.
In '91, there wasn't a Star Wars movie.
No, but I mean the
Oh
Star
yeah,
Wars movies that come before had. I thought that they were like normally like
yeah, they were a little longer.
2 hours.
Yeah, um,
Yeah.
there
So
were some slow parts to this movie.
yeah, I mean,
I
I
mean,
mean you could. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not saying they were unnecessary. They were just the pacing of them.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever get tired of? I mean, did you feel like, all right, let's wrap this up?
Yeah,
I
during some of the montages.
okay, yeah. What I felt like is you could have dispensed with. I wonder if you could have dispensed with like the whole like from the time they escape Turkey to him becoming Robin of the Hood. Like I feel like you could have skipped all. It's an hour of him just
Yeah,
gallivanting about like the English countryside, like trying to find his purpose. But
yeah. I mean,
but
there were some scenes in there that I thought was important. It was important that he saved the boy from
okay.
Guy of Geesborn. I don't think they needed to have such a preamble, or, so much in front or behind it, and but I think that lent itself to furthering the story down the road to a certain degree to establish what kind of man we're looking at.
Yeah,
And it also kind of set up the relationship between him and Nazim.
yeah. None of it is entirely wasted.
Yeah.
I guess my problems with the first hour or so are they try and give him like six different degrees of reason to become Robin of the Hood, and I'm like,
Right.
there was his father being accused of being a devil worshiper, and his relationship with the church, and his relationship um with Maid Marian, and his relationship with like the Thieves of Sherwood Forest, and then it was him being a noble, and then like moving to be a man of the. I just felt like it was a little bit much to try and
Yeah,
build in, and
I'd
and
agree.
and none of it felt like they gave it like enough attention. Like I was of all of that, what I was most interested in was his relationship with the church, his father being accused of being a devil worshiper, and the fact that this is a guy who just came back from the Crusades. Like I felt like if you had focused in on like those three aspects, like the religious aspects of what it meant to be a crusader in that time, and then his relationship with somebody who was from the of the Islamic faith, um, and then coming back and interacting with the church that I don't know my history that well. Had the church split at that point, or was it still the purely Catholic church? I
Third Crusade?
Yeah, because I want to say Henry was a descendant of Richard's, right? So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
church. The Church of England had not split. Like, so I feel like that could have been like a big focal area, but it just felt like there were all these reasons coming through, and it felt like for Kevin Costner, like it literally felt like a hot potato thing. Like he addressed, like for him as his character on screen, I felt like you got to see him in each of those settings like for 5 minutes, and then they moved on, and I was like, huh, like the whole devil worshipping father thing. I feel like I would have been really pissed off if I had been like
Yeah.
giving like spent years in a Turkish prison fighting for the Crusades to come home and have my father accused of not being a Christian, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I almost feel like you could have dispensed with the full, you could have dispensed with the full first hour,
Yeah.
or tighten up with the focus on it.
Yeah. Or at least create something.
Yeah, some more tension.
Uh,
Um,
and focus on one.
right, right.
Definitely.
Favorite scenes? You got any?
Uh, it's actually been a few weeks since I watched this. Some of my favorite scenes, though, are because of how they're spoofed in other movies. The So I really don't think I can count those, but I have some. I'm just at a loss at the moment.
Right. I have a couple, and all of them are kind of as we mentioned with the breakout performances, right? Like I love the scenes. You know, there are some Alan Rickman scenes. Like I love when he um, is dealing with the scribe, and the scribe is explaining to him like how and why like the people love Robin Hood and not him,
And
and
cancel Christmas.
they cancel Christmas. But I love the it's a little misogynistic, I guess. Like, and I shouldn't say that in a joking manner, but I love Alan Rickman's delivery of the line though, as he's leaving, and there's the two maidens, who
You, my
he's
room, 10:30 tonight. You, my room, 10:45, and bring a
bring a
friend.
friend,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
apparently those are ad libbed,
yeah. That's again, that's Alan Rickman, right? So that's
and
awesome.
canceling Christmas too.
Okay, all right, very good. Yeah, so I like that scene. I like the high adventure scenes with Azim and Robin. And there's one. I think it's when they go to visit Maid Marian for the first time, and and I think that's when it is. I may not be perfectly right about it, but there's a scene where I think I want to say they get catapulted out of something and then land like in a hay thing or something. Or I think it maybe Kevin Costner is the one who either I can't remember whether Kevin Costner or Azim chops the line to send them catapulting. But again, there's it's right on the edge of like slapstick and vaudeville at times. Um, and again, I love it that cultural clash. Like there's the scene where Azim takes I guess what would have been a 16th century like version of like a telescope, which was basically two lenses of different focal length wrapped in leather.
Hmm.
And he hands it to Robin, and Robin thinks that like he sees Guy of Gisborne like within 2 feet of him, and actually
Right.
pulls out his
Draws the
sword and is trying
sword.
to fight
Yeah.
him. So yeah, so but I do like, as much as I talked about like they could have dropped some of those things um, in the opening hour. I do like that there was enough attention paid to the script for them to take the care to show that uh, that the Turkish people. So I believe most of the Crusades, you know, even though the Middle Eastern was very tribal at the point, like the focal point of most of the Crusades were the Turkish Empire. Um, so I like the fact that they took the time and care to show in the script that the Turks were actually very scientifically advanced and mathematically advanced. It's not like they were a bunch of like barbarians or savages. You know, I mean, again, not to malign anybody's people or history. This is not like when the Romans were attacking um, into the British Isles, right? Where like, those people
Yeah.
actually were barely, barely qualified as actual civilization. But the Turks had made a lot of advances, and it was nice to see that they showed little glimmers and examples of that. And now that I mentioned, I think this is another huge reason why the movie had a big impact on me when I saw it. Um, I was in college at the time, and my undergrad was in history. So there you go. So I kind of probably the first burgeoning um, uh, uh, tethers of me developing a real passion for period films. So cinematography. One of the things I noticed is there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's some particularly chosen instances of wobbly cam in
Yeah.
this that I thought were very effective. Um, and these were instances where, particularly with Alan Rickman, when he's on his tirades, there's a cameraman who kind of walks around his chambers uh, at different perspectives, sometimes at a perspective like below the chin of the subject, and deliberately not like on a steady cam rig. And I thought that was particularly effective because I felt like it spoke to the chaotic and somewhat random nature of the Sheriff of Nottingham as portrayed by Rickman.
Yeah. Overall, I didn't have too much issue with the cinematography, though. In some of the fight scenes, I felt that it suffered a bit. There was could have been a, you know, I get it. They're actors. They want their faces on the screen. But sometimes a wide angle shot, when you have a lot of action, is more helpful to the audience. And I felt that there were instances where it was wide angle, or where it was, zoomed in, and we didn't get a sense of presence of where everything was in relation to what was going on. And I have that problem with movies like Transformers, and where the action, the cinematography happens on the people in the middle of the action, but you don't really get a sense of what else is going on and how it plays into what's overall happening.
Yeah, I feel like this is a movie that begs to be remade.
Again.
Yeah, and it's almost a shame. Well, but I mean, like this specific script,
Oh,
right?
yeah, okay.
Like I feel like there are limitations. First of all, the movie feels like it doesn't age well. Just there's a grain quality to the film that feels very aged
I
when you
liked
watch it.
that, actually. I
Okay,
have to say, I like the grain.
okay,
It does give it that kind of, it gives it that older feel, which, okay, I mean, 1190s too now, but there was no film back then. You get what I'm saying, right?
right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I agree. Otherwise, the visuals, some of the stunts,
Yeah,
I think could have been enhanced with more modern techniques.
yeah, and I'm not even like this. Like I'm not even bothered as much about this. I just felt like the overall like camera quality,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like you mentioned, like the wide angle lenses. Like I would love to see somebody shoot this with like some red cameras or some black magic cameras or something. I feel like the setting in England, Sherwood Forest, the river scenes, um, and I feel like you could probably have better sets today as well. Like it was clear to me that like like that set was like maybe 2 blocks, right, at most, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
like that whole thing could have fit on a single sound stage, in some cases. Um, so yeah, I would just like to see it redone. But
I'm looking up the technical specs, and it was only shot in 35 millimeter.
yeah, was it 4:3?
166 to 1.
Okay, all
Is
right,
that
all right, all
four?
right.
That's yeah. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I would have preferred 70 millimeter, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
Um,
I mean, if you do enough location stuff and you have enough aerial photography, like again, like I feel like you could do if you were shooting this film today, you could do IMAX, right? I mean, was it the
yeah.
was it the Russell Crowe one, 70 millimeter in IMAX?
Russell Crowe one.
Yeah, the Russell Crowe Robin Hood.
Uh, I don't remember this one. Wow, I really don't remember this one.
Yeah, this was as far as I know, this was the first Robin Hood film that came after. Well,
Other than Men in Tights,
rather
of
than Men in
course.
Tights, right?
Um, let's see. That one, all of a sudden we're looking up other movies. No, it was
I know.
35.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, a variety of different films were used, but they were all 35
But
millimeter.
but you said the aspect ratio on Robin Hood was 1:66. So this aspect ratio though is 2:39 to 1. So
Yeah,
it's
239.
almost. I mean, not quite double. It's
Yeah,
half again. The aspect ratio.
yeah,
So, I don't
yeah. I am looking at the tech specs for both of them because God, I'm a nerd.
know.
And the 2010 one does feature a lot more different lens and camera configurations. So
Okay. So where are you finding that, by the way, on Mojo?
IMDb,
Okay. Okay.
IMDb under full tech specs.
Ah, okay. I never explode up to the full. I just see the
Yeah, the basics.
yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
you
cool.
can go down a rabbit hole with
I,
that
I,
one.
I too am a camera nerd. As I'm sitting here in front of my mirrorless interchangeable lens camera that I'm using for podcasting. So, um, uh, so, um, so we talked about music soundtrack. That kind of brings us to the end, Peter. Let's score it on a 10-point scale with half-point increments. What would you give this film?
Yeah, honestly, I give it a solid 5. It's not a awful movie, but it's not winning any awards with me. Um, I feel like perhaps it was meant for a younger audience. And I can see this playing well for well, like you said, you were a college student when you saw this film. I could see it playing well for college students looking for a good movie to watch, popcorn movie.
Yeah, and I could see my kids appreciating this like in their like pre-teens, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like 13 probably. Once they hit 14, I feel like they'll be at that point where they would look at it like with sarcasm, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I would give it a 6.5 on a 10-point scale for me. I feel like, and looking at the stats as we ran down them at the beginning, I could definitely remember now, I guess, this movie being like one of the biggest deals in 1991. Um, but I feel like you could definitely see its age in the film when you look at it now.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still that veneer that you appreciate. And again, you have some great actors. Maybe not their greatest performances because I felt like they were a little framed by the script. Um, from like the pedigree of like the big action movie. Like I feel like you can see some of the imaginings that would eventually become something like the Matrix. Just in
Yeah.
terms of you had like you didn't have bullet time in this, but you had the arrow cam in
Right.
this a
Yeah.
lot, and that was kind of a relatively new technique for this time. So you were starting to see kind of the creep in of some of these John Woo type um, camera shots and action pieces that I feel like would eventually go on and beget things like the Matrix. Uh,
Yeah.
so for me it would be a 6.5. I don't know, man. Anything else that you want to discuss before I give you the options for the next podcast?
Well, I do want to read a little snippet of a review
Yeah, go ahead.
that I pulled up on Rotten Tomatoes. Of course, it's for off in a tangent. I can't believe people don't understand that Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregator. But they're the critics they've polled give it it's running at 50%, 26 like, 26 don't. Audience has it around 72, but one of the reviews that just made me laugh is Costner is not the Robin Hood for the ages, but in this expensively mounted production, he'll do as Robin Hood for the summer. And I guess that kind of wraps up my feelings. They clearly paid attention to costuming. They paid attention to scenery. The sets looked good. The props looked good. Is it the best Robin Hood I've ever seen? No. Is it good? Is it enjoyable? Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you, and this isn't. I'm not. It's going to sound like a trick question, and it's going to sound like I'm putting you on the spot. But actually, I'm asking you because as you were going through that, some of these thoughts were running through my head. What is the best Robin Hood you've ever seen? Because part of my problem as I was considering it was I don't know that we've had a great Robin Hood film in modern times.
Yeah. Um, God, it's the Disney one. Honestly,
And the Disney one, you mean the animated one?
the animated one is probably the one I think of when I think of Robin Hood.
Right.
God, my nerd card is showing again. I enjoyed the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where they did Robin Hood.
Okay. All right.
I enjoyed Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right. Right.
And beyond that, though, I haven't. I mean, Arrow is kind of Robin Hood in a way.
Ish. I'll leave that discussion for another night. So,
Yeah,
have you ever watched the BBC Robin Hood series?
I've seen bits and pieces here and
Yep.
there, but I haven't. I mean, there's so many good shows.
Right. Yeah, that's yep. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, as you were talking through it and reading that review, I was like, he's the Robin Hood for right now. Like, but again, I don't like. I can't put my finger on like this is the definitive Robin Hood.
Right.
What's
It
that?
it's not like I've spent time on Russell Crowe's movie either. I couldn't even remember it was released. So
Yeah, and for me, that like I liked that movie. Again, I liked it as a period piece, and it stands. It's kind of like Les Mis, right? It's like which Les Mis is better? Liam Neeson or I always brained up his name like right before I'm about, or the Hugh Jackman one. Like both of them were surprising. Like I didn't expect the actors and actresses to pull some of those performances off.
right,
But
and both have highs and lows.
right, and the bigger thing is when I think of the latter one, I think of it always in contrast to the other, right? So if the other movie didn't exist, I don't know that the other, so they kind of go.
Yeah,
They're only relevant. They're only significant and relevant because of each other. And again, that's kind of the way I feel about like again. I don't know that we've gotten a great Robin Hood. Kevin Costner's just as good as anybody else because I don't know. Like again, nobody's like taken that role and like owned it.
yeah. I mean,
And
you're talking about a character from literature that's hundreds of years old. So can you really? I mean, is it actually based on someone? Who knows? But
right, but to me the difference is like the difference to me for me is like the Three Musketeers, right? Whereas
yeah,
the Three Musketeers film, which I think that is a Disney film,
I
like
believe you're right.
like the Three Musketeers film does feel like a definitive piece of work for for transcribing Orthos, Porthos, and Aramis to the big screen in modern
Right.
times.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a good one.
so yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, I guess we could go back as far as Errol Flynn.
Right, and then I bounce off that because I just have a problem like digesting old movies. So,
I mean,
but
Robin Hood's been done so many times in so many different ways that.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk about what we're going to watch for our first assignment for the month of November.
All
Uh,
right.
and then eventually, and I guess what I would say for anybody listening or watching, as we go through this over the next 2 months, we're probably going to start talking about, and you'll probably start seeing potentially some format changes, some flavor changes. It may predominantly stay the same thing, and we may just open up the aperture to movies on other services. We don't really know. We're thinking that over. So let's talk about the things that are dropping on Netflix in the month of November. And Peter, I got to say, I may be kind of boxing you into a corner here. And I will go in chronological order, although that maybe is a bit disingenuous, but from how I actually put the list together. Now, just because this is a little bit unusual, and because I felt like I was wiring you in so tightly that I felt like I needed to give you an escape ramp. So I'm actually putting 4 movies on the table, although normally our framework is 3, but I'm going to give you 4.
Okay.
The first one is actually an animated film, and this is a weird movie in November for Netflix. I'm going to keep a closer eye on this next year. Hopefully, we'll still be doing this podcast because I wonder if this is a typical November thing and it's something about the holidays and the end of the year. There are a lot of movies dropping on Netflix this month that I feel like have been on Netflix before.
Yeah.
Like they're saying Doctor Strange is dropping November 1st, but I'm like,
Is it the animated Lionsgate Doctor Strange?
okay, that's a possibility.
Because I know like Next Avengers,
Yeah,
Heroes of Tomorrow, and Planet Hulk are both Lionsgate animated.
Okay. All right. So, funny that you would mention those specific films because your first option is Next Avengers: Heroes of Tomorrow.
Great film.
I throw that one out there because at one point when watching one of the Marvel animated films, which are, I would say, if I just had to, take a swag at like their average review score for me, they're pretty low. Um, but
I like them.
but this one stood out to me in like the preview roll or the post roll about other Marvel animated films, and I've always wanted to watch this. This is actually a 2008 film, so it's a bit aged. Um, Actually, technically predates the whole MCU
Yep.
stuff, I think. But so that's the first option that's out there. And now we start to get a little artsy. Maybe not quite artsy. So your next option is Into the Forest, which is a film about. Do I have this right? Yeah. So this is a 2015 film. Now we've made this mistake a couple times where I have mistaken one movie for another movie of the same title, and I kind of wish all these different sites do um, these aggregation lists, and I kind of wish that like Netflix would just post their own list with
It
like
would be nice.
little icons by the thing, so like actually what movie they're talking about when they just list it.
So when you say Into the Forest, you're talking about the 2015 Canadian drama film?
I believe it is the 2015 Canadian sci-fi thriller film where, after a massive power outage, two sisters learn to survive on their own in their isolated woodland home. And I think there's a bit of like I said, horror thriller kind of aspect to this. This is Ellen Page and Evan Rachel Wood, um, who are two actresses which I don't get to see enough of, and so I can remember seeing the previews for this, and it's something that I wanted to see. I believe they hole up in this place, and I think I want to say somebody comes after them, or they encounter somebody who I think is not particularly friendly. I'm not exactly sure, but it's actually won. It's actually 3 nominations and 2 awards, mostly from Canada. So, um, so that is the second option. The third and fourth option, these are the ones where I really start to wire you into a corner. And let me see. So, uh, Next Avengers: Heroes of Tomorrow drops November 1st, so it dropped last week. Into the Forest drops on the 7th, so it drops this Wednesday. The other two options, where is this thing? Drops already dropped on November 2nd. It's an interesting pair, and if you select one of these, I would toss it out that maybe we want to watch both of these for the first half of the month podcast. The Other Side of the Wind and They'll Love Me When I Am Dead.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right.
I'm familiar with them both. They one of them is the Orson Welles film that was never finished, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the second one is the making of, essentially, the documentary surrounding it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
right.
I think that's yeah, you can paint me into that box.
Okay. All right. Very cool. I thought that would be a lot of times we do a lot of the action oriented AAA movie kind of stuff, but I think it's nice to do a sidestep.
And that's perfectly fine, because I'll be quite honest, this is probably going, into spoiler territory, but Jiro Dreams of Sushi is coming out on the 22nd, and that was going to be one of my picks for next time.
Okay.
So,
right.
I mean, again, we're going kind of off our normal, but.
Well, the other thing is, this is kind of it's a soft month, the second half of the month, I'm sure, because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Netflix isn't going to, fire any of its silver bullets.
Right. I mean, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic's movie's coming out
Hey,
at the end of
that will be a
November.
very big deal in my house, actually.
Yes, it will. Well, then that's what I'm saying, because all the families together, there's a
Right.
lot of family-oriented movies coming out towards the end.
Yeah, and not a lot of action-oriented stuff in the bottom half of the month.
Yeah.
I'm taking a minute before we sign off to look at this. Figure out what is this? The World Is Yours. It looks like a foreign film, actually. Yeah. So. Yeah. So at any rate, so that's what we're gonna do, folks. So for those of you following along and who like to play our game, and play at home, we will be viewing The Other Side of the Wind and They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, which are both Orson Welles films, or films about Orson Welles. And this, I guess I'll call it comeback picture that he tried to make. I guess The Other Side of the Wind was something he made very near his death.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, everything was shot but not finished.
Okay.
Um,
Well, and actually, yeah, I don't know how they put this together. I mean, this movie just came. It's tagged as coming out this year,
yes.
but tags Orson Welles as the director, which obviously it's a bit of a time jump there.
Yeah,
So
principal photography ended in 76.
okay, all right, all
And
right.
then some editing in the 80s, but the film became embroiled with legal and financial complications.
Okay.
And then he died.
Okay, well, very cool. That sounds very exciting. So look, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thanks very much for joining in for this episode of It's Another Thing Movies. This was episode number 3, revisiting Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the film from 1991. I have been Agascally Stamus, one of your co-hosts. The other co-host has been Mr. Peter Morrow. And let's go ahead and sign off. Once again, representing GearWorks.com, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, and the Rounding Off Infinity gaming channel on YouTube. My name has been Agascally Stamus, along with Peter Morrow. That's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for joining in. Until next time, happy hunting, stay safe out there, and watch the movies that you love. That's going to do it for us. We are out.